Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to a very special episode of Healing Conversations. I'm so excited about our guest today. She is Riva Robinson. I found her on social media and I was so inspired by her profile. I had to connect with her. So, Riva, welcome to Healing Conversations.
Thank you, Joy. It's such an honor to be here today.
And I'm so ready to just go right into the conversation. But can you just kind of tell the viewers just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my background is in medicine. I'm what's called a functional medicine doctor. And functional medicine is an approach to medicine that's all about getting to the root cause of illness. And so in my practice, I've had the beautiful opportunity to work with a lot of women and some men, but really get to a lot of those issues around stress and nutrition and all those lifestyle factors that are really the thing that are the drivers of the diseases that we're experiencing today. And especially during the pandemic with the increased rates of mental illness and anxiety and all that, a lot of that comes down to our ability to cope and create a lifestyle around us that supports our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being.
Absolutely. And that's why I was so excited about this conversation. We're talking about being more than enough. And I know for me, that's something for years I struggled with. I didn't feel like I was enough. And even with my weight loss, it's like I would be really motivated. And like a couple of years ago, I lost 100 pounds. And It just seemed like it just slowly crept back. Not all the way. I can happily say it didn't all the way come back, but it's still, and I'm like, it has to be a mindset, and I just definitely struggled with being more than enough and just having that self-love. So, I mean, what is that? How would you define self-love?
Yeah, and thank you so much first for sharing and opening up about your own struggles with weight, because that's whether it's 100 pounds or 10 pounds, our experience of that and that feeling of not being able to achieve that level of perfection that society imposes upon us. But self-love for me really means showing up for ourselves 100% and unconditionally taking care of ourselves. And that's really challenging. And I'm sure you have a very similar situation where we have so many commitments. We're pulled in so many different directions. We have a servant's heart, so we want to do everything that we can to help the people around us, and usually our needs ends up at the bottom of the list. And so self-love isn't just me soaking in the bathtub for an hour before our chat today. Yes, that's self-love, but it also means like doing this hard thing of saying no to the commitments that aren't 100% aligned with what you want to do in the world, that allows you to feel whole, that allows you to feel more than enough. So it's all of those activities, all of the things that we do that reinforce that more than enoughness in our lives.
I love that. And when did you get to that point? Because I know for me, I kind of talked about it a little bit in the past episodes. I was sitting down with my husband and he had kind of elevated his tone for me. And I didn't know that it was a trigger from my childhood. It was related to back when my father used to yell at me. And I thought I was perfectly fine. Even though I was overweight, I'm like, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong. I don't need to heal from anything. And when it happened, I just started crying. And for me, that was my breaking point. I'm like, okay, what is this? Why is this happening? And it really caused me to kind of dig deep into what's going on in my life and what happened to me in my past. Did you kind of have a breaking point or a moment where you were like, okay, I need to get some things together?
Yeah, I have them all the time. It's funny that you say that, because the feeling of I finally have made it and I feel like I'm more than enough in each and every way. Like I still haven't made it to that point. Like it's an ongoing journey. And when I wrote the book, and here it is, when I wrote this book, it truly was an experience of channeling this book. I hadn't fully embodied that message yet. And so after writing the book, and it was a crazy sprint. So I entered a program called the 9 Week Bestseller to be able to write a book that elevates your authority and self publish on Amazon and become a bestseller, which I successfully did. Actually, I procrastinated for the first 4 weeks of the program. And then once I started writing, I realized I didn't like the structure of it. So this final edition here was written in 4 weeks.
Wow.
And so I was totally burnt out after launching the book. And, when we're burnt out, you don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel good about the things that you're doing. You feel like I felt almost resentful of the book and how it wore me because I poured every bit of myself. And like it's literally like my child. I birthed this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so afterwards, I went through a major spiritual upheaval of having to figure out, okay, like, well, what makes me more than enough? Like, I wrote this book, it's a bestseller, great, but now I feel horrible. Now I don't feel more than, so I had to combat all of those demons, so to speak, and be able to really understand that it's not what I do that makes me more than enough. It is who I am, just being me. And it's really hard to strip away the layers as, there's so many ways. And, whether it's our work and, the compensation, or whether it's, weight and, fitting into the cute clothes or the clothes or the swimsuit or whatever it is, it shows up in so many ways. And whether we're consciously registering it or not, we have all these kind of chips away at our spirit unless we're constantly pouring back and affirming our more than enoughness. So it's very much a part of my journey right now to fully embody that and rest in that. And I fully 100% accept that something will come up probably later today that will give me another opportunity to reaffirm myself. But there's moments where it's, I stay in that space and it's easier to embody it. And there's moments where it's a total fight for myself. And that's where that self-love and the unconditional part of it comes into play.
Right. And so, like, I know you mentioned weight, and I, of course, mentioned weight. And this question, it's really a question for me as well. Do you think there's a connection with not feeling like you're enough and your weight and your health? Do you think those two go kind of hand in hand?
Absolutely. And and I'll use my mother-in-law as an example. So Dana met her. That's my husband's mom, obviously. And she, when we first met, was 280 pounds. And at that same time, when Sean and I were dating and his brother and his now wife were dating, Dana realized that, wow, my boys are going to be married and I'm going to have to, or I get to be a grandmother someday. And I want to be able to crawl around on the floor with them and chase them around the yard and do all of these things. And I won't be able to do that if I'm this weight, or I might not even be alive. And that rude awakening for her made it so that she was inspired to go the journey. And that along the way, to see how she's been able to pour more love into herself and love herself so deeply. But for her, you would have never known just looking at her, because she's the sweetest. You would never think that she thought that she wasn't good enough. But deep down, there was a wounded soul, a young woman who'd struggled with her weight her entire life. And, I, very similar to me, even though I was never like morbidly obese or extremely overweight or really significantly overweight at any point in time, I still had this internal battle with my weight. And so we very much connected around that. And so today, Dana's 120 pounds lighter than when we first met. And she's, I mean, she's incredible. And so to see how her life is transformed as a result of her pouring all of the love and attention into herself, it's impacted our whole family. It's impacted her life and the community that she's been able to build. And it's just been just a total transformation. And again, it
Yeah.
starts with the self-love and affirming that
Hmm.
we all have nurturing to do. Is not There's not
Oh
a
yeah.
single soul on the planet that feels like they're good enough in every single way.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I know for me, like I kind of talked about it in the beginning, it's just those emotional triggers. Cause it's like when you're triggered and your emotions are out of whack, I just start, the first thing I want to run to is some type of food, usually chocolate. Like that's my thing. I'm like, just bring me the chocolate and everything will be okay. Just kind of thinking about those emotional triggers. Like, what advice could you give on how to avoid being pulled into reacting and dealing with those triggers?
Right, right. So I think what you said earlier about realizing, when your husband elevated his voice, it took you back to your childhood and, your father yelling. So first it comes with realizing where that trigger is coming from. And usually
Mhm.
whenever we're triggered into, habits that we realize don't serve us, there's a little girl wound or a little boy that's wounded. And so a lot of my work has been really nurturing little Riva and getting to know her better and love on her and give her the things that she wants so that she feels safe and secure and protected and loved. As it's we're always going The triggers are always going to show up. We can't get rid of the
Right.
triggers.
I
I
wish we
wish we
could.
could.
That would solve everything.
If I could just live at the spa, like I would just,
Oh yeah,
just it'd be
perfect.
great. No triggers. Eventually, I'd start triggering myself because I think we're programmed just to, experience some type of challenge in some way.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, so first, acknowledging that, there is this little girl inside of you that's hurting and to, mother her. That's been so much of my journey recently. And so acknowledging that the triggers will come and coming up with a plan. So acknowledging, okay, I'm triggered and little Joy is hurting and she wants chocolate because that's
Hmm.
always made her feel better. But as
Oh
her
yeah.
mother, I'm going to decide to do the more loving thing, the hard love. It's saying, no, you can't have that right now. I know you
Hmm.
want it and it's so delicious, and we're going to have it later. But for now, we have goals. Literally having those, I have so many conversations with myself. Like if you could see inside my head, you'd probably think I were schizophrenic because I'm always like just talking to myself. But I find
Right.
that's a much healthier way about, moving forward in the direction that we want instead of beating ourselves up, as we're really good at having a conversation with ourselves where we're beating ourselves up for the things that we're doing wrong.
Right.
So if we do that, then we can also do the opposite and be kind to ourselves and show ourselves compassion and know that, okay, no matter what, I'm more than enough. Even if I do eat this chocolate, I'll still be more than enough. But what feels more than enoughy, if that's a word, there's more than enoughness and the decision that allows me to feel a wholeness in a different way, in a way where I feel lighter in my body and more confident and all of those things.
Absolutely. And that was I think the biggest battle for me was not being so hard on myself. And so when I wrote Dear Young Me, I wanted the message to be healing is an inside job, but it's also a process. Like, don't let anyone tell you that you're just going to walk through these 4 steps and then you're going to wake up next week completely healed, because that's absolutely not the case. Like those triggers, those struggles, it's a constant thing. And I love what you said about it kind of being a mindset. Like you have to talk to yourself. And I have conversations with myself as well. Sometimes they don't go as well as they should. I give in, but I love the idea of nurturing your inner child, like, because that's really the root cause of everything. What advice would you give someone who is struggling to feel like they are more than enough?
Mm. Well, the first most obvious one would be to pick up a copy of my book. At first, there's that part of me that feels like, oh, I'm being too self-promotional. And like, no, seriously though, it's like I can, and the place of utmost humility, say that like this book will change your life. Like if you are receptive
Mhm.
and open to hearing this message, like I had to hold like bring this message to life at a point in my life where I didn't believe it and I still had to push it out of me. So like this is a piece of work that is it's divine. And so reading the book and then, going through that same process of like evaluating, like there's so much on our journeys that we get to do. So sometimes it's okay, well, maybe it's my career that's the thing that's running me down so much that I don't have the time to do all of these things for myself that will allow me to be healthier and happier and all the things. So it's really about taking a step back and evaluating like what are those obstacles to me feeling good enough, to feeling more than enough, because good enough, that's still settling. So what
Mhm.
are those obstacles? Be real. Like it's probably going to be a very hard conversation because some of it might be related to some very close relationships in your life and you might lose some people. There's probably people, if you're feeling so down on yourself, they're people, whether they're physical relationships or people in the media or whatever, like social media, like what are those things showing up in your life where you are feeling not more than enough, and eliminate them. It won't be easy, but we have to, again, like if you're a parent and your child is playing with a toy that you realize just got recalled because this toy is now like shooting out razor blades
Yeah.
and wounding children. I don't know, hopefully
Yeah.
hopefully this toy, like you're going to take that toy away from the child because you love them,
Right.
even though they love this toy and it's the coolest thing ever and there's some pleasure experienced out of it. Horrible example. But just being your own best advocate, whatever that
Right.
looks like, and just being committed to the work. Because I hit my head against the wall so many times. I'm like, why don't I feel good enough? But it's like, wait, it's just another opportunity to learn how to love myself in a different way. And when we realize that this is the journey that we're on for life, and I get to have fun during this whole process, regardless of what I'm doing, like then that's a game changer. It gets to be
Yeah.
fun to love ourselves.
I love that. Don't look at it as an obstacle, but an opportunity to learn how to love yourself another way. I'm going to remember that because I like that. And I think that's so needed, especially when it comes to the healing journey. So I really want to thank you for taking the time out. I know you're so busy, so I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out to
Oh,
do
you're
this
so
healing
welcome.
conversation. And where can we find your book and where can we follow you just to learn more about you?
Yeah, so the book, it's available on Amazon, so you can get it in Kindle or paperback. And I spend most of my social media time on Instagram, but I will be getting on Clubhouse a little bit more soon. And so I'm Riva Robinson Wellness on Instagram, and just Dr. Riva on Clubhouse. And, for anybody who's interested in diving deeper with me, I'm launching my new community, Riva Wellness Society, with another virtual slumber party coming up on June 25th or 26th. The virtual slumber party experience is our Riva Wellness Society gathering, where we come together and it's a space for women to be heard, held, and healed. And so the main thing that I'm offering women through that experience is to dive deeper with my Tame the Body Shame 90-day detox, where we go through the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical issues that are holding us back from loving ourselves and embracing our body fully and clearing and detoxing that stuff from our system so you can show up and shine in your life.
Absolutely. I love that. And I will be taking part of that. When I saw it on Instagram, I'm like, yes, this is what I need. This is the journey and the path that
Yes.
I'm on. So I definitely want to take part of that. And I want you guys to make sure
Wonderful.
you follow Riva on Instagram. I'm telling you, her profile is so inspirational. Every time I see you
Aw.
out there, I'm like, look at her go. It's so motivational and so inspirational. So thank you
Joy.
again. Thank you for taking time to do this. And thank you guys for tuning in to Healing Conversations. I will see you guys next time. Peace.